All right, so this section is about healing unfinished business. In the last section, we talked about those defining moments that have shaped your behaviors, your habits, and just how you show up in the world, right? How you feel about yourself. This section, from those defining moments, came probably some emotional issues that were never healed. So there are parts of you that are still feeling probably the way that little girl felt based on those defining moments. So this is what I mean by unfinished business. Things that have happened to you in the past that have generated feelings and emotions that are unexpressed. And those feelings and emotions have created issues around how you show up in the world, how you live your life today. One of the prominent theories of psychology is that we all have a lot of unfinished business, a lot of baggage, so to speak, that we stuff in a bag and drag along with us throughout life. And this started way back in childhood. And we call this a lot of unfinished business, usually a lot of emotional trauma that happens in childhood. And sometimes even later in adulthood, we experience emotional trauma that leads to a lot of unfinished business. That is emotional and psychological feelings left unexpressed, unheard, and unfelt sometimes. So let's get going and talking about what we mean by this. And here's the deal. The fact is that, most of us are stuck in certain patterns that cause us to feel anxiety, depression, lack of motivation, confusion, and just a general failure to thrive. And at the very core of our experience is our adaptive ability to exist in pieces, an adaptive preservation of self at any cost. While initially adaptive, we stop cooperating with our selves, as in more than one self, right? Internally, however, we move from equality to hierarchy, subjugating the very parts we want to protect. Sounds familiar? And, to maintain relationship with caregivers as a kid and preserve self, when I talk about self, I'm talking about big self, internal self, higher self. To preserve self long enough to survive childhood, we contain parts that do not fit the system. You're too loud, you're too this, you're too that, you're not this, you're not that. Well, we try to fit in, right? Because we want to be safe. We want to belong. That's what it means to be a kid. We want to get our needs met. We want to be fed, obviously. So we learn as kids that, well, we have to appease our parents, we have to appease our caregivers, we have to appease our teachers. And believe me, schools are even the worst because they are playgrounds that just seek to subjugate people to become, strip away any bit of individuality and identity. So the whole becomes just a mess, right? As kids, and this is the baggage that a lot of us carry around with us throughout life if we don't do go through the process of healing them. Okay, so we disintegrate, we shatter. Shatter, that is, the self organizes against self, and we become walking dualities. The containing versus the contained, the rigid head versus the chaotic body. It happens automatically to all of us. With extreme reactions happen in some extreme adaptations. The more extreme the adaptation, the more extreme the reaction. The bigger the emotion, the bigger the conflict. Some of us have small conflicts, some of us have large conflicts, some of us experience big trauma, some of us little trauma. But the bigger the trauma, the bigger the conflict, and the bigger the duality, right? Parts of ourselves rebelling against each other, fighting against each other. We are shattered, we are not whole. This is where the perception of being broken. This is where it comes from. Okay, very, very important thing. So, this is the complexity of complex trauma, folks. Missing experience creates an inability to heal, yearning for unmet needs while protecting against them. Just as we internally separated parts that seek connection from parts that seek safety, we push externally against whatever we need most in life because there is no agreement. We are shattered. We're not whole. We are in pieces, so to speak. But at some level, we wait for the elusive experiential safety that will release us and reverse the process, bringing everything together. So we live in conflict in the meantime. And that's the conflict that you're experiencing, the internal conflict you're experiencing. Internal conflict can look something like, I want to be seen, might be met internally with, you're too needy, you're flawed. If you let others see you, they will leave you. Sounds familiar? Another one might be, I want to be big, might be met with, you will become a target. Stay small and stay safe. Another, again, I want to express my energy, might be met with, you're too exuberant. Be quiet. You're too loud. You show too much. Stay still or they'll leave you. Still another, I feel sad, might be met with, you're weak. If you show it, they will hurt you. And again, I want to be taken care of, might become, nobody will take care of you. You're alone. Do it yourself. I want to experience safety with others. Could become, nobody feels safe with you, girl. You might be alone forever. If you want people nearby, you have to keep a safe distance to avoid triggering them. Sounds familiar, this one? A lot of you are dealing with intimacy issues in relationship. Well, this is part of the background, the unfinished business that's taking place that is leading to that lack of intimacy in relationships. So, the deal is, sometimes the parts we try hardest to contain become most visible to others. We try to hide emotion and it becomes bigger and louder. This is how we polarize, right? The containing side attempts to diminish because the other side is amplifying, because it is trapped and simply wants attention. This is what I mean by parts of us crying out to be heard. We're seeking attention. There are parts of us seeking attention because we feel trapped inside. So the contained side amplifies because the containing part is attempting to diminish. And so goes the dance, around and around. The contain amplifies because the containing part is attempting to diminish. We're dancing. Okay? But we land, folks, sometimes on either side of the conflict. Sometimes we're the contained part, feeling our own unmet needs on top of feeling trapped. Other times we are that containing part, wanting to survive and meet needs. Sounds familiar? Knowing that if the contained part escapes, we will face punishment or abandonment. But no matter where our consciousness lands, the other side becomes the villain. You see the internal conflict here? This is the essence of unfinished business. So after years of disconnection and internal judgment, integration, folks, is the only viable answer. The only viable answer. Integration leads to a recognition that I am not this intense emotion, nor the judgment of it. It's the point at which we realize this part in exile has been trying to get our attention, to elicit from us a response it never got from our caregivers. That's what's going on. Parts of us crying out to be heard, trying to elicit a response. The part that's in exile. That's the part that's crying out, trying to elicit a response. Pay attention to this. If there's internal conflict, it just means that there are part of you that are in exile is just crying out to get your attention, crying out for a response. So this gives us a chance to feel what it felt, to finally see it, to stop containing it as something evil and instead embrace it and feel with it. Embrace it and feel with it. Give it a voice. Likewise, the containing part ceases to be perceived as a bully. When we realize it has been protecting us all these years, that some part of us believe our core to be so valuable and worthy of protection and preservation. It's a simple moment of self-compassion. We get to the point, healing becomes a moment of self-compassion. And often with a response felt physically in your body, telling self, yes, this did happen. This present feeling is how you felt for so long. I feel it in my body. I get it. You did not deserve this pain or create it, and I will not punish you or leave you. No, I will not punish you or leave you anymore. I am too much for others becomes, for instance, I've been judging myself as too much in order to contain myself and avoid recreating the feeling of distance I felt from my father. Make sense? One might realize I am afraid of others because I fear myself, or I depend on others because I have abandoned myself, or my emotions grow and overwhelm precisely because I try to diminish and dismiss them. This is the path of integration. This is the path of learning to be whole, becoming whole again. Okay? So when we know each part, when we can observe without judgment and treat it with compassion, it has no reason to polarize or amplify. It calms and centers. It synchronizes. It trusts our own core. This is the essence of getting whole. This is the essence of doing unfinished business work, looking at parts of ourselves that have been in exile for all this time, and basically is just crying out for attention, crying out to be heard. This is the essence of becoming whole again, okay? So, unfinished business is often the result of unexpressed emotions. These unexpressed feelings may lack a suitable outlet or may continue to be avoided because of what? Shame or fear of being vulnerable. Sounds familiar? Shame or fear of being vulnerable. Most people tend to avoid these painful feelings instead of doing what is necessary to change them. So they continue the process of dragging their baggage around with them from year to year, and it leads to things like, extreme weight gain, lack of intimacy in relationship, self-esteem issues. You look in the mirror and you don't like what you see because you're afraid. You're afraid of really seeing that part of you that's been living in exile for so long. This is the essence of healing unfinished business. And, healing unfinished business require bringing unexpressed emotions and unfulfilled needs into the here and now, into the present, and giving them a voice. This requires a great deal of emotional awareness, folks. We're going to be working on developing your emotional awareness, working on giving a voice to those unexpressed emotions those unfulfilled needs that have become unfinished business, your emotional baggage. So, one of the exercises we'll be doing at some point is taking a seat and giving an empty chair to some part of us that need expression, to some part of us that need to be heard, and assuming the voice of that part of us, that entity, and allowing it to speak, allowing it to be heard, allowing your unmet needs to be met. This is the work of becoming whole. There is no getting around it. If you don't, the problems you're having will persist. So, your exercise is, in the defining moments exercise that you did earlier, I want you to think, what unexpressed emotions or unfulfilled needs did you discover? I want you to list them in your journal under the heading unfinished business. Okay, so list them in your journal under the heading unfinished business. And number 2, I want you to choose one of your unexpressed emotions from the exercise above and really practice feeling it in your body. Okay, really practice feeling it in your body. So don't just think about it. I want you to really embody it. Just allow it to be part of you and really feel how that part of you felt. I hope this has been helpful. We will be doing this kind of work either individually or together in the group. So really take heed, and if you need to go over this again and read the section in the handout of this module, then really go over it, or go over this and listen to it again and just see what resonates with you and see what comes up for you, okay? So in your journal, I just want you to record what comes up for you after dealing with this segment. All right, I'll catch you in the next segment. Take care now.